Welcome, brave souls, to a realm where shadows whisper secrets too vile for the light. I'm here to unravel tales so chilling that your skin will crawl long after the silence falls. Help me reach my first 1,000 subscribers, hit that button now, and together, let's unearth the horrors awaiting us tonight. I'm Mia Ross, a journalist struggling to keep my head above water. The bills are piling up, and my mother's medical bills are draining what little money I have left. So when I get an email inviting me to write about historic buildings in a small town called River Grove, the unusually high salary seems like a lifeline I can't pass up. Desperate times call for desperate measures, right? I pack up and head to River Grove, a place that seems to cling to the edge of the map. As I drive in, the town greets me with abandoned factories, their silent chimneys standing tall like tombstones. The air is heavy with the kind of silence that makes me feel like I'm being watched. I check into the only motel in town, a rundown one that looks like it was built decades ago. As I drop my bags off at my room, something caught my eye at the community board in the lobby. Newspaper clippings of missing persons, their faces blurred, but their stories seemingly forgotten by the townspeople. I wondered what secrets River Grove was hiding. That night, as I sat on the edge of my bed, the weight of my decision to come here settled in. The job was a gift from God, but the strange atmosphere of River Grove made me wonder if I was walking into something much darker than a simple writing assignment. I knew one thing for sure. I needed to keep my eyes open and my head down. This town had stories to tell, and I was determined to uncover them, no matter where they led me. The next morning, I met my contact, Edmund Webb, at the local coffee shop. He was a soft-spoken historian with a deep gaze that seemed to pierce right through you. His knowledge of River Grove was impressive, but there was something about his demeanor that made me feel uncomfortable, like he was too calm, too composed. Edmund offered to show me the abandoned paper mill, a key part of my assignment. As we walked through the massive, eerily silent structure, the air was heavy with ghosts of the past. The concrete floors had strange stains that Edmund casually dismissed as industrial residue. I couldn't help but wonder what kind of industry would leave such traces. As we toured the facility, I spotted something odd, a small child's shoe stuck underneath an old machine. Before I could reach for it, Edmund quickly stuffed it into his pocket, saying it was for the town museum. His quick movements and the way he avoided my gaze made my heart race. Why was he so eager to get it? And why did I feel like he was hiding something? Leaving the factory, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd stumbled upon something much darker than a simple historical tour. Edmund's reaction to the shoe, coupled with the eerie atmosphere of the factory, left me with more questions than answers. As I walked back to the inn, I knew I had to dig deeper into River Grove's secrets, and quickly. After my unsettling visit to the paper mill, I decided to stop by a local diner. The diner was buzzing with the usual small-town gossip, but my ears perked up when I heard a group of locals whispering about another disappearance. My journalistic instincts kicked in, and I couldn't help but lean in closer. Just as I started asking questions, the conversations around me abruptly stopped. The atmosphere became tense. An elderly waitress named Clara caught my eye and gave me a slight nod, handing me a folded piece of paper as she refilled my coffee. The note read, "Leave town. Not safe." I found it unsettling. What was going on in this town? Back at the inn that night, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I dove into researching the history of River Grove, and what I found made me shudder. There was a pattern of disappearances spanning 15 years, all seemingly unrelated at first glance. But as I mapped them out, a chilling realization hit me. The pieces began to come together, and the picture they formed was terrifying. I knew I had to tread carefully, but I couldn't back down now. There was definitely a story here. I was determined to dig deeper. The next day, I met a local photographer named Derek in a quiet corner of the town park. He'd contacted me after hearing about my interest in the disappearances. Derek was nervous but determined, and he shared his suspicions about Edmund. He believed there was more to the historian than met the eye. Derek showed me a series of photos he'd taken around town. Some of them showed Edmund with various people just before they disappeared. The images were chilling. Edmund's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the anxiety on the faces of those around him. Derek had built a case against Edmund, but he was afraid to go to the police, suspecting corruption. We had planned to meet again that night to discuss our next steps, but Derek never showed up. My heart sank as I waited in vain at the agreed-upon location. When I called his home, there was no answer. A cold fear welled up inside me. Had something happened to him because of what he knew? I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Derek's evidence was vital, and now he was missing. I knew I had to act quickly. The truth was out there, and I needed to uncover it before anyone else disappeared. With Derek missing, I knew I had to act quickly. I followed the map he gave me, which led me to the River Grove Historical Society. The building was quiet, almost too quiet, as I crept inside and made my way to Edmund's office. I moved carefully as Derek had instructed. I was stunned to find a secret room. The air inside was cold and stale, and the sight that greeted me was beyond anything I could have imagined. The room was filled with diaries, each one recording Edmund's collection, detailed accounts of his murders, accompanied by photographs of his victims and their personal effects. The sheer volume of evidence overwhelmed me. A camera had been set up, clearly to record his atrocities. But what sent a chill down my spine was the newly dug hole in the concrete floor. It was a stark reminder that his killing spree wasn't over yet. I knew I had to get this evidence to the authorities, but the weight of what I'd discovered made my hands shake. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was a nightmare that I had to stop. I quickly gathered what I could, knowing that every second counted. I was determined to be the one to expose it. As I hurried out of Edmund's office with the incriminating evidence, my heart nearly stopped when I heard his voice. He had returned unexpectedly, and before I could react, he was cordially inviting me to see his special collection in the basement. Realizing he didn't know I'd discovered his secret room, I played along, feigning interest to buy time. As we descended the stairs, Edmund began to reveal his twisted philosophy. He believed he was preserving the essence of River Grove by collecting its people before the town died. His calm, almost serene tone sent shivers down my spine. How could anyone rationalize such horror? The basement door locked behind us with a cold click, and my eyes immediately darted to the corner where I saw Derek bound and gagged. My heart ached at the sight of him, but I knew I had to stay calm and focused. Edmund's delusions were clear. He saw himself as some kind of twisted historian, preserving the town's legacy through murder. I needed to find a way out, not just for myself, but for Derek and everyone else Edmund had harmed. Every second counts, and I must use my wits to survive this nightmare and end Edmund's reign of terror. He shared a lot with me in the basement. It occurred to me that this was my chance to collect irrefutable evidence. I pulled out my phone and secretly pressed record. Edmund's voice was calm, and eerily calm, as he detailed his crimes, almost as if he were giving a lecture on local history. I knew for sure that the local sheriff knew about his activities, but had turned a blind eye in exchange for money from Edmund's family fortune. The corruption was deep, and it explained why so many disappearances went unsolved. Hearing this, my resolve grew stronger. I had to get this recording to someone who would listen, someone who could stop Edmund and expose the corruption that allowed him to continue his reign of terror. But first, I needed to find a way out of this nightmare and save Derek. Time was running out, and every second counted. While Edmund was distracted, meticulously preparing his tools, I took the opportunity to free Derek from his bonds. As I helped him up, our sudden movement caused a shelf to collapse, sending Edmund's collection of grisly memorabilia crashing down. The sound of shattering glass and splintering wood echoed throughout the basement. Edmund's face was twisted in panic as he tried to save his artifacts. It was just the distraction we needed. Derek and I dashed for the stairs, running as fast as we could. But just as we reached the top, Edmund caught up, grabbed my ankle and pulled me back. Adrenaline surged through me, and I kicked him hard, sending him tumbling down the stairs. With a thud, he landed in the rubble of his monstrous collection. Derek and I wasted no time. We slammed the basement door shut and locked it, trapping Edmund inside with his grisly loot. Panting, we leaned against the door, knowing we had only bought ourselves a brief reprieve. We had to get out of the building and to safety, but more importantly, we needed to get the evidence we had gathered to someone who could stop Edmund once and for all. The nightmare wasn't over, but we were one step closer to ending it. With solid evidence in hand, Derek and I knew we couldn't trust the local authorities. We drove straight to the state police, where we turned everything over: the diaries, the photographs, and my taped confession of Edmund's treasonous crimes. The state police took our story seriously and immediately opened an investigation. It didn't take long for the truth to come out. The investigation revealed that Edmund's family had covered up his crimes for years, using bribes and threats to keep the local sheriff quiet. When the police searched the basement of the River Grove Historical Society, they found the remains of dozens of victims, confirming the horrors Edmund had recorded. Edmund was arrested shortly thereafter. Once in custody, he confessed to everything, showing no remorse. Instead, he seemed to take pride in his historical preservation project, seeing himself as a misunderstood artist. His arrogance was frightening, but it couldn't save him from justice. The case made national headlines, and I poured my heart into writing an article that exposed not only the killer, but also the corruption that enabled him. The story of River Grove's dark secret was revealed, and it was comforting to know that the victims' voices were finally being heard. We had stopped a monster, but the scars of what we had discovered would stay with us forever. Justice had been served, but the journey was not over. 3 years had passed since River Grove's nightmare, but the memories remained. I returned to town to attend the unveiling of the memorial to the victims, a somber reminder of the horrors we had uncovered. The town was slowly rebuilding its reputation, and it was heartening to see the community come together to heal. Edmund had been sentenced to death, scheduled to be executed next month. It was a small comfort to know that justice had finally been served, but the weight of what had happened still weighed heavily on me. As I left the ceremony, I felt a strange sense of closure, but that feeling didn't last long. Back at the hotel, an unmarked package awaited me. Inside, I found a small carved figurine and a note in Edmund's handwriting. "You will always be my unfinished chapter." A chill ran down my spine. Even behind bars, he was still trying to get inside my head. The weight of survival, the memories of what we endured, will always be with me. But I will leave River Grove, carrying with me the hope that the town can finally find peace. The wind howled like a beast as I trudged along the desolate shore of Harbor Point, my backpack weighed down with the weight of my new life. Forged papers and a few essentials were all I had left after fleeing the suffocating grip of my ex. The late autumn air was chilly on my cheeks, but it was a small price to pay for freedom. As I walked, my eyes caught a lone figure in the distance. watching me with an intensity that made me shiver. It wasn't just curiosity in his gaze. It was something deeper, more possessive. Even in my exhaustion, my instincts screamed danger. I quickened my pace, the rough waves a reminder of the stormy journey that had brought me here. Harbor Point was supposed to be my refuge, but as the figure continued to stare, I couldn't shake the feeling that my escape was only just beginning. The sky darkened ominously as I approached the stranger, my heart pounding with fear and desperation. He introduced himself as Nathan Gray, his voice calm and inviting. The storm was brewing, and the promise of shelter and a phone to call for help was too tempting to resist. I followed Nathan to his cabin, perched precariously on the edge of a precarious cliff. The place was spotless, but there was something about it that made me feel uneasy, like the eerie calm before a storm. As he showed me around, I couldn't help but notice the mirrors all facing downward, as if Nathan couldn't bear to look at himself. It was a small detail, but it made me nervous. The cabin offered warmth and safety from the howling wind outside, but as I settled back in, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just stepped into another danger. Nathan's hospitality was a lifeline, but the downward tilt of those mirrors whispered a warning I couldn't ignore. I jerked awake, heart pounding as I realized I was tied to a chair. The storm outside was raging, its fury matching the panic rising within me. My backpack lay open on the floor, its contents strewn everywhere, the forged papers, my lifeline to a new life, now exposed. Nathan stood before me, his demeanor changed. The calm, charming man from before was gone, replaced by someone focused to the point of annoyance. He approached with a makeup case, his movements deliberate and precise. As he began to apply makeup to my face, his voice was soft, almost reverent, as he spoke of making me perfect. He mentioned others who had come before me, a cold hint of a pattern that I was now a part of. My eyes drifted to the makeup case, noticing the distinct shades of foundation, none of which matched Nathan's complexion. Each had a small label with a different woman's initials printed on the powder. The realization hit me like a wave. This wasn't just about me. It was about a series of women, each victim of Nathan's bizarre ritual. When the storm cut off all communications and blocked the only way out, I knew I was truly trapped. The storm finally lulled Nathan into a deep sleep, giving me the opening I needed. With shaking hands, I struggled to get out of the chair. My heart pounded as I crept through the cabin, searching for an exit or something that might help me figure out what was going on. I found a locked door that led to the lighthouse. My instincts told me to keep moving, but my curiosity and fear of what Nathan might do if he woke up pushed me forward. Using a hairpin in my pocket, I managed to unlock it and made a chilling discovery. The room was filled with photos of women who looked eerily like me. Each photo showed them sitting at the same dining table where I had my first meal in the cabin, all wearing the same ancient necklace Nathan had given me as a gift. My stomach twisted as I realized he'd been targeting women of my appearance for years. Scattered around were articles of clothing with carefully removed tags and newspaper clippings of missing persons. The pieces began to fit together in a horrifying puzzle. Nathan wasn't just a lonely lighthouse keeper. He was a patterned predator, and I was his latest victim. As I stood there, surrounded by evidence of his obsession, I knew I had to find a way out before it was too late. The storm might have trapped me here, but it wouldn't stop me from fighting for freedom. The bathroom was filled with the pungent smell of oil, the mirrors fogged with steam. Nathan led me in, his grip firm, but strangely gentle. He handed me an outfit, each one meticulously chosen. As I undressed, he watched with terrifying concentration, his eyes tracking my every move. He began to cut the tags from my clothes, his movements precise and deliberate. Each cut felt like a piece of my identity was being stripped away. What caught my attention was how carefully he kept the tags in a small silver box, treating it with almost religious reverence. When he thought I wasn't looking, he whispered to it, as if it held some sacred power. Nathan began to talk about his wife, Elise. His voice was soft, almost nostalgic, as he recounted how perfect she was, how the other women he'd brought here had failed to replace her. It was clear that he saw me as another attempt, another chance to recreate his lost love. I realized then that my survival depended on playing along. I nodded to his story, feigning interest and compliance, while my mind raced for a way out. The steam from the bathroom blurred my vision, but not my resolve. I would wear these clothes, I would listen to his stories, but I would not let him erase me. I needed to stay awake, to find a moment to escape this strange transformation. Nathan momentarily lost focus, and I took the opportunity to explore further. I found a secret door that led down to the lighthouse's basement. The air was damp and cold, but it was my only hope of a way out. As I descended, my heart pounded with both fear and anticipation. The basement was dimly lit, but my eyes were still clear. In the corners, I noticed faint scratches, evidence that not all of Nathan's victims had succumbed to his madness. Some had fought back, some had escaped. It was a glimmer of hope that fueled my resolve. In the clutter, I stumbled across a partial map and cryptic notes scrawled on scraps of paper. They hinted at weaknesses in Nathan's routine, times when he might be less vigilant. My mind raced as I pieced the information together, planning my next move. Then I saw a message carved into the wall. He fears what he creates. Beside, it was a crude drawing of a fire. The words sent a chill down my spine, but they also sparked an idea. If Nathan feared fire, perhaps it could be my way out. This clue, left by someone who had been here before me, might be the key to my survival. I stuffed the map and notes into my pocket, determined to use whatever information I could find to my advantage. The basement, with its echoes of past struggles, gave me the strength to keep fighting. I was not alone in this. Others had managed to escape, and I would honor their resilience by doing the same. The dining room was set in an oddly elegant manner, candles flickering on the table. Nathan had prepared a celebratory dinner to mark my supposed rebirth as his perfect companion. The air was tense, the atmosphere thick with his uneasy anticipation. As we sat down, Nathan's demeanor oscillated wildly between gentleness and anger. One moment, he was gentle, almost loving, as he served the meal. The next, his eyes flashed with anger if I didn't react exactly as he expected. I played along, nodding and smiling, all the while scanning the room for anything that might help me escape. During the meal, I noticed Nathan's eyes lingering on the candles, a flicker of fear crossing his face every time they flared. It was then that I realized his pathological fear of fire stemmed from the death of his wife, Elise. It was a vital piece of information, a weakness I could exploit. Suddenly, lightning struck nearby, cutting the power to the cabin. The room was plunged into darkness, and Nathan's calm facade shattered. He became a trembling child, his fear of the dark and fire evident. It was the first time I'd caught a glimpse of true vulnerability, a chink in his armor that I could exploit. In the chaos, I discreetly took a knife and a lighter from the table and put them in my pocket. These tools could be my ticket to freedom. As Nathan struggled to regain his composure, I knew I had to act quickly. The darkness had given me a brief window of opportunity, and I wasn't going to let it close without trying to escape. As the storm began to dissipate, Nathan led me up the winding stairs to the top of the lighthouse. The wind was still fierce, but the rain had stopped, allowing us to see the area around us. He pointed out to sea, his voice tinged with nostalgia, explaining that this was where he had first seen his wife, Elise. My mind raced as I looked around at the emergency flare system mounted on the pedestal. It was still working, a beacon of hope in this nightmare. My heart pounded as I formulated a desperate plan, clutching the steak knife and lighter I'd grabbed from the dining table. As we stood there, I noticed something that filled me with hope: the distant headlights of a car on the coastal road. It was the first sign that the outside world was once again accessible. The sight of those lights filled me with urgency. I had to act now, or risk losing this opportunity forever. Nathan was lost in his memories, his guard temporarily lowered. I approached the flares, my hand shaking as I prepared to light them. This was my chance, my only chance at freedom. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for what was to come. The lighthouse, once a symbol of isolation, now represented my chance to signal for help and reclaim my life. Dawn broke over the horizon as I activated the emergency flares on the lighthouse platform. The sudden burst of fire sent Nathan into a panic, paralyzed by fear as the flames began to engulf the structure. Seizing the moment, I ran down the stairs and out onto the rocky shore below. The cool air hit my face as I ran toward the beach, my heart pounding with fear and hope. But Nathan wasn't far behind, clutching his precious box of longans, his obsession driving him forward despite the chaos. As we reached shore, a final confrontation broke out. Nathan's eyes were wild with desperation as he attempted one last, desperate act to protect my identity. He tried to drag me back to the burning lighthouse, intending to burn me along with his collection of longans. In the struggle, the box of longans slipped from his grasp and fell to the wet sand. The label scattered, revealing dozens of names, evidence of more victims than I had realized, spanning decades rather than years. The sight of those names gave me renewed resolve. I fought back with everything I had, using the steak knife I'd grabbed earlier to defend myself. I woke up in a hospital room, the sterile smell and soft hum of machinery, a stark contrast to the chaos of the past few days. Passing fishermen saw the lighthouse burning and intervened, pulling me away from Nathan. I was beaten and bruised, but alive. Over the next few weeks, the investigation unfolded, revealing that Nathan Gray was actually Eric Lauder. He had assumed the identity of the real lighthouse keeper years earlier, using that identity to cover up his heinous crimes. The evidence was overwhelming, and soon his trial was upon him. 6 months later, I was in court, ready to testify. My heart was pounding as I took the stand, but I knew I had to speak. I recounted every gruesome detail of my ordeal, from my arrival at Harbor Point to the final confrontation on the beach. It was a relief to have my story and my identity back. During the trial, I met 2 other survivors, women who had also escaped Nathan. Together, we pieced together the full extent of his crimes. They shared their own traumatic experiences. The box of labels, now in evidence, revealed dozens of names spanning decades. It was a sobering reminder of the lives Nathan had destroyed. But, looking at the other survivors, I felt hope. We had survived, and now we were helping to ensure that Nathan or Eric would never hurt anyone again. When the judge handed down his verdict, a weight was lifted from my shoulders. Justice had been served, and while the scars would always remain, I knew I had my identity back. I was no longer just a victim. I am a survivor, ready to rebuild my life with the strength I found in the face of unimaginable darkness.